Hey, welcome back to the land of Middle Earth. We're going to be looking at Phase 2 of the Battle of the Fords of Isen. Now, in my previous video about Prince Theodred, I explained how he came to the Fords of Isen, and he crossed over to the West Bank and rode north to try and take out Saruman's army before it was fully ready, and that he was not successful and was forced to turn back, especially after he saw another small force hurrying on the eastern bank to surround him, so he called a retreat. Now, when he got back to the Fort of Isen, the daylight was waning, and he stiffened the garrison on the west bank with 50 dismounted riders led by Grimbold. So on the west bank were two earthen forts that guarded the crossing. So to get to the crossing, you had to go between these two earthen forts, and it would have been hard to go through there with archers and spearmen and whatever hitting you from the sides. So it was best to try and take out the forts. Prince Theodred and his guard set up on the Iyat. Iyat, how do you pronounce that? I have mine as a styrofoam thing because I don't have time to make a good one. This is just a makeshift setup. And then the rest of his companies he sent to the east bank, which had 3 companies of riders holding it. And that was when disaster came, for Saruman's eastern force came down with unexpected speed. It was much smaller than the western force, but more dangerous. In its van were some Dunlending horsemen and a great pack of the dreaded orcish wolf riders, feared by horses. So in the van of Saruman's eastern force were Dunlending horsemen and a great pack of the dreaded orcish wolf riders, feared by horses. Behind them came 2 battalions of fierce Uruks, heavily armed but trained to move at great speed for many miles. The horsemen and the wolf riders fell on the horse herds and picketed horses and slew or dispersed them. The garrison on the east bank, surprised by the sudden assault by the masked Uruks, was swept away, and the riders that had just crossed from the west were caught, still in disarray. Though they fought desperately, they were driven from the fords along the line of the Isen with the Uruks in pursuit. So as you can see, I have my Dunish horses and my wolf packs facing off against 3 companies of Rohirrim and 2 battalions of Uruks right behind them. What happens is these guys get pushed, and they're just going to get slammed into by the wolves. The orc riders these wolf riders are just going to slam into them and scatter the Rohirrim. And basically they just scatter. Many of them fall, but many more scatter. They're in disarray all over the place, and the wolf riders continue to plunge deep into the formation, as well as the Dunlenders. So the Rohirrim are just scattered all over the place. A few of them probably dismount and would join Theodred, or they would be fighting with Theodred. That's what was happening on the east bank. There was a huge melee. Horses don't like wolves too much and would panic and flee, where they'd be hunted down. Plus, there are 2 battalions of Uruks driving them further down, further back. So all of a sudden these guys are driven way, most of the surviving Rohirrim are driven away. They're driven back towards the east, and they're driven towards the south, those that survived. They took heavy losses, but not as heavy as feared, and they were being driven further back. So the Dunish cavalry and the wolf riders continued to pursue and spill out into the eastern plains of the Westmar, or the Westfold, in pursuit of any horses, and try and drive as many as they could away. And the 2 battalions of Uruks, they also, hugging the river, closely followed, pushing any dismounted riders, or as many riders as they could, out west towards the more Dunish west march. While that was going on, a company of men, or orc-men, dispatched for the purpose, ferocious and mail-clad and armed with axes, they hastened to the islet and assailed it from both sides. So I'm using my Dunish troops for this. They're going to assail this islet. They come rushing down, and they're going to assail the islet from both sides. So they go into the middle of the ford, and they start attacking Theodred's forces with axes. Like I said, Theodred probably has a few more men from the battle with the fords. Now while this is going on, just as the eastern bank defense falls and scatters, and Theodred is assailed, Grimbold, in command on the west bank, is attacked by a massive force coming down the road from Isengard, and he is hard put himself. So there's a fierce battle going on in the earthen forts on the west bank. But Grimbold looked eastward and, dismayed by the sounds of battle and the hideous orc cries of victory, he saw the axemen driving Theodred's men from the shores of the Eye towards the low knoll in the center. Now Theodred's great voice crying to me, Aaronless. So once Grimbold, taking a few men that stood near him, ran back to the Ayat. So fierce was his onset from the rear of the attackers that Grimbold clove his way through. Till with two others he reached Theodred. So Grimbold, hearing the battle cries and seeing how desperate it is, takes as many as he can, and he runs across, bowls over one guy, climbs up the Ayat, and assails them from the rear and reaches Theodred. But he's too late, because Theodred and the lot is then hewn down by one of the axemen. Grimbold slays the axeman and stands over the body, defending it defending it. Now Grimbold might have been killed, except for he had help from Elfhelm came down. Except for Elfhelm, leading 4 companies of riders, appeared on the scene. He arrived on the scene because he had been riding towards the forts and had been planning to stop at Helm's Deep, but he saw some wolf riders in the fields and met some fugitives. He probably gathered a few of them up, and he hastened to the forts. So he didn't see the 2 battalions of Uruks chasing the fleeing garrison down the... Instead, he rode directly to the forts, and he surprised the Isengards. 2 of his companies pursued any Isengarders left on the east bank northwards, and with the men of his own company he rushed. So he came down, he scattered whatever garrison was left, any surviving. There would have been somebody holding the east bank still. He scattered them, sent 2 companies north to pursue them, and then went across with his own company on foot. Went with his own company on foot to the Ayat and slaughtered the few remaining axemen that were left with Grimbold. They were killed entirely to a man, and killed them all to a man. Elfhelm found Grimbold fighting 2 great axemen for possession of Theodred's body. One Elfhelm slew, the other fell before Grimbold. Theodred wasn't quite dead, but and said his last words, "Let me lie here to keep the forts till Amber comes." Now, when night fell, a harsh horn sounded, then all was silent. The attack on the west bank ceased, and the enemy there faded away into the dark. And the Rohirrim held the fords, but their losses were heavy, not least in horses, and the king's son was dead, and they were leaderless. Thus ended the first battle of the Fords of Isen. Its chief purpose was clearly to slay the king's son Theodred. The western Isengard force was to be no more than a holding force, to pin defenders in place, while the eastern force was to get behind them. Only the valor of Grimbold and Elfhelm, and the arrival of Elfhelm, saved the Rohirrim from an even greater defeat. So that's basically the first battle of the Fords of Isen in a nutshell. It starts with Theodred's retreat back to the fords, the Isengard attack on the east bank, scattering the Rohirrim and driving Theodred to the knoll in the islet, and then the western force attacking, Grimbold coming back across to help Theodred, and then Elfhelm's arrival and the death of Theodred. Next up, we'll do the second battle of the Fords of Isen, just a quick run through of what it should be. This is a great scenario for the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game. Just need a bigger table and more guys. Because you gotta remember, Isengard is mostly orcs, Uruks, and Dunlenders. So I need more Dunlenders. So anyway, hit the like button, subscribe if you want. I'm just gonna keep doing this regardless, because I love Lord of the Rings and I love doing what I'm doing. But until next time, this has been Roman Daisel. I'm out of here. Shadows increasing, peace throughout the land is ceasing, evil mist flows through the valley.